Hey YouTube, it's me once again. Hope you're having an amazing day. We've got lots more content coming out, throwing it at you all the time as we try to do. Remember, please subscribe, download the podcast. We have lots of links below. Follow us on Instagram. All big time helps. So this summer is the Olympics. And reluctantly, I'm going to talk about the Olympics. And I say reluctantly because I'm in a position at this point where I am going to be pressured into talking about the Olympics because it is, usually a big time event in America. It's going to draw in people, and you always pander to the masses. That's the important thing. Sometimes when you're at this stage that I am, you have to talk about what other people want you to talk about, and that's going to be the Olympics. And something that's very strange to me as I go forward is that the Olympics are in a position where it's a very old concept. It's all about the tradition at this point, and it's very confusing why people still are so drawn into the Olympics. Even just the casual person, not even a sports fan, just finds themselves drawn into the Olympics because the names are not really recognizable. The only ones who become you don't really care about the sports themselves. You only follow the sports around the Olympics, even the swimming events, diving, anything that you like. You're not paying attention to that sport year round unless it's your sport that you play or used to play, for some people who still want to hang on to that and love the sport and follow it closely. Unless you played the sport, most of the times you're not following it religiously. Therefore, it doesn't make a ton of sense when we get to the Olympics why people still love the tradition so much. Even basketball, which is one where you have a larger fan base, especially globally and at home in America, it's a sport that draws people in for the Olympics, but you don't have the best players, and it's not really fascinating to people. When you put the Olympic teams together, it's not really that intriguing to people as it might be with an all-star team style thing. You bring in people, but that's because you have more basketball fans. But a sport like swimming, the only stars that come out of the sport are people that we know from the Olympics. We're not really following them year-round or at any of the other events. Even gymnastics with Simone Biles, she's only famous because of the Olympics at this point. She's going to be back in 2020, which is something that people are drawn into. But again, the only experience came 4 years ago. So if people stopped paying attention to this year's Olympics and then came back next year, I feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense why anyone would keep watching it. Because if you don't know the names, and you only know the names because you watch this specific event, you don't pay attention to the sports, the actual sports events themselves, and you're not really a sports fan in general, why do people keep tuning into it? It's very fascinating. It's because of the tradition. It's always existed, therefore people want to keep doing it, and that's a fascinating proposition. It's always existed, therefore people want to continue with that ideology. And it's interesting because of the way people interact. When I ask the question why, it's related to the fans, not necessarily the athletes themselves, obviously, but also us as Americans. And one of it is, I think the biggest reason is that it's always been there, therefore we continue to watch it. But the other thing is, even though a lot of the concepts are very outdated in terms of the events themselves have not been popular, some for hundreds of years, and have not mattered in the hearts of people, quote unquote, for a while. And I think another part of the reason is that when you wrap it in the flag, when you wrap sports in the flag, it adds this whole new element to the events themselves, because then it's like, this is one, something we can all relate to, and two, it's something that brings us national pride. Like, being at the top of the summit brings out this emotion in people, brings out this joy in others that is very fascinating. Obviously I felt that before when you talk about the U.S. winning gold medals, or you talk about as a kid when you watched USA soccer play, or when you're a kid and you're watching USA basketball or USA baseball. Even the hockey events at the Winter Olympics are always fun. Or you look at Michael Phelps, watching him compete, was always a source of pride as a kid because it was something that your parents really loved. It was something that your grandparents and aunts and uncles and your adult friends as a kid, the adults in your life, could all relate to. And it's fascinating because we've all agreed upon this principle based on tradition that we're going to continue to enjoy watching the Olympics. And as it comes up this year, I have no real interest in it. I mean, the whole concept is pretty outdated and it's hard for me to talk about it. I feel the same way about boxing. Other people feel that way about baseball. I'll never feel that way about baseball because I just love it so much. It's been ingrained in me from childhood, and I love watching the sport now, even as I watch it crumble apart in the form of conservatism and just kind of this traditionalist aspect of trying to save the sport. At some point, people will grow bored of it and grow tired of it, but it hasn't happened yet with the Olympics, and I think the flag contributes to that, and also it's relatable on a grand scale. You don't have to be a sports fan to enjoy watching the Olympics. You kind of need to be a sports fan to enjoy watching baseball and understanding the nuances of baseball. But you don't have to be a sports fan to do it, and because more people conform to this tradition of the Olympics, I know conform is a weird way to phrase it, but it is what it is. Conform is exactly what it is. We all agree to enjoy this principle that is the Olympics. Because more people enjoy watching this event, it forms this nuanced reality where people really enjoy watching these sports even though they aren't sports fans. And because more people conform to this idea, we put ourselves in a position where the Olympics retain their tradition, get a lot of money, and in the end doesn't really do that much for economically, other than the IOC gets a lot of money, and really the tradition doesn't make a lot of sense. NBC pays a lot of money to cover it. And it's something that is really fascinating because it proves that we've all conditioned ourselves to believe things as a certain way, even when they aren't. The Olympics really don't hold any merit except for best in the world at events that most people don't pay attention to. And if you don't pay attention to it, and it's only this every 4-year thing, why do we hold it up to such this high standard? If it's okay to just root for something every now and then and pay close attention to something occasionally, but the thing that's weird, and I could say kind of challenging to comprehend, is why you hold it up to such a high standard. Because these things used to matter. These sports used to matter a lot, and we're talking 1800s, early 1900s, even the 70s, when we're talking about decathlon and swimming events and the 100-meter dash and the fastest man alive. These things used to matter to people, but now we find ourselves in a position where they are devalued, yet we're holding the events up at this high prestige. And that's just kind of what traditionalism is you're holding something of high prestige up that most of society has devalued over the long term. And the Olympics capture that, and I think that's why it's kind of a turnoff as it comes on. But